Hi, I'm Matt Jennings, chef owner of Farmstead and La Laiterie here in Providence. Today at La Laiterie we are going to show you how to do some nice slow cooking. Braising is one of our favorite things here at the restaurant. We're going to show you how to braise some pork shanks. Here we've got some pork shanks that we actually fabricated off of a pig in the restaurant just this week. They are different sizes, so if you are going to get pork shanks from your butcher, just make sure that you are able to look at them before you actually purchase them. Some can be really big, some might be a little bit smaller. You want to go for one that's kind of medium size, roughly about pound and a half. We have a nice heavy bottom skillet here. You want to make sure you have something similar at home. A lot of times I suggest cast iron. Cast iron will give you a great sear on a piece of meat, especially if you're doing some sort of braising. But today we've got this nice stainless pan that's heavy bottomed, and basically we have a little bit of flour mixture here. In this flour mixture, we've added some cracked pepper, some kosher salt, a couple other spices, a little cumin, a little coriander, and that's all mixed together. That's going to be your dredging flour for the shank. So we're going to start first with a little bit of olive oil right into that pan. Let that get nice and hot. You basically want it almost smoking. Meanwhile, we're going to take our shank, select a good one here, and you're going to make sure it's nice and dry. I've dried these off already with a paper towel. The drier it is, the better that you're going to actually get some nice caramelization on it. So we're going to dredge that right in the flour, right in your mixture. And although there is some salt in this flour mixture, we're going to add some more salt at the end anyways, just to make sure that we've done the seasoning to taste. Alright, I've got my shank all dredged, and I'm going to sear that off now in my skillet. So we're going to let that caramelize for a couple minutes, and as it goes, we're going to keep turning it so that every side gets nice and brown before we move it into the oven. Okay, so we've been searing off our shank. We're getting pretty close. It's getting nice and brown. So what I'm going to actually do now is add some celery. And then some carrot. And lastly, a little bit of onion and garlic. Okay, so that mirepoix has been sweating out for a little while. Now we're going to add our liquids. So first I'm going to go in with the beer. Okay. I'm going to go about a quarter up the way of that shank. Basically, by the time this goes in the oven, we want to have liquid about halfway up the side of the meat, because you are going to have some evaporation in the oven. Now we're going to add that pork stock. So right before we put this pan into the oven, we're going to add some whole thyme to that pan as well. Put that down there nice. And then it's going to go into the oven at about 300 degrees for an hour and a half, maybe almost 2 hours to cook fully. So into that pot, the first thing we're going to do is saute some of those same aromatics again. The mirepoix, carrot, celery, and onion. So I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to the pot. And the same deal. You go in with the carrots, celery, some of the onion, and garlic. So that mirepoix has been sweating in the olive oil. And now we're going to add our beans. Yeah, these have been soaked overnight. Okay. Just stir those to combine. Next to our beans, we're going to add some chicken stock. You basically want to pour enough liquid in, whether it's chicken stock or water. Better to use chicken stock, but if you have to, you can use water. You want to pour enough stock in so that you have about a ½ inch to an inch above the level of the beans in the pot. Lastly, to the pot, we're going to add some fresh bay leaf, as well as some whole thyme. Going to let those cook to combine. We'll cover them on the stove, keep them on a low flame, keep stirring them and making sure that they have plenty of liquid, and let them cook. So our beans are cooking, our shank is in the oven. Right now we're going to make a little bit of gremolata for this dish. Since it's kind of a play on ossobuco, we're going to make a gremolata for this, but it's going to be a little bit different. We're using apple and fennel. So we've taken some diced apple and some diced fennel, combined it with some parsley, a little bit of garlic, and of course a little bit of salt and pepper as well. And kind of toss that together. Now as the beans have been cooking, we're going to add about half of this gremolata right to the beans. Stir that in. Just kind of let that cook out. You're going to reserve half of the rest of the other half of the gremolata for using as the garnish on the plate. So that shank is looking really nice. We're going to plate it up. There's a couple things we have to do right before we do so, and one of those things is straining the sauce out of the pan. If you look and see, we just pulled this out of the oven. You can see how much that sauce is reduced, and that's exactly what you want because you're going to finish your plate with that sauce. So you want to be very careful when straining the sauce. One reason is because this shank is so tender it's falling right off the bone. So very carefully hold it in place, and we're just going to pour some of that liquid. You don't need the whole thing, but a good amount of it. The beans are all cooked, the shank's looking beautiful. We're going to plate this up for you right now. So the first thing we're going to do is take a nice little spoonful of those Great Northern beans. Make sure you drain them out a little bit so there's not a ton of stock in there because you don't want the stock to bleed all over the plate. Okay, next we're going to plate up this shank. Now remember that shank's very tender. It's practically falling off the bone. So try and get it as close to your plate as possible. And I'm normally not a big proponent of using tongs to move meat, but in this case it makes a lot of sense. And just choke up really far on your tongs down towards the end, and just make sure that you can pick that guy up. Okay, then we've got that sauce that we strained from the pan earlier. That's going to be your finishing sauce. We've just added a little bit of cold cube butter to that to get it to come together before we strained it. And now we're just going to go right over the top. Lastly, we've got the remaining gremolata. And all I've done is added a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of lemon juice to get it to come together. I'm going to kind of compete with the bone. A little bit of gremolata. And we can just finish the garnish up with a little bit of thyme. That's braised pork shank with Great Northern beans and apple and fennel gremolata.